Hello, and welcome to GDA Live. My name is Gail Davis, and I will serve as your host today. Today, we're going to talk about distractions and focus. And our guest is Curt Steinhorst. We have worked with Curt since 2015. He is the best-selling author of the 2017 book, Can I Have Your Attention? Inspiring better work habits, focusing your team, and getting stuff done in a constantly connected workplace. Boy, he had some insight about constantly connected now that we're living through the global pandemic. We're going to have plenty of time for Q&A at the end. Throughout the time that Curt is speaking, you can put your questions in the chat room. And with that, I'm going to say welcome, Curt, and let you take it away.
Thanks, Gail. I am so excited to be with you in the last quarter of 2020, which seems like it could not come soon enough. I don't know about you. When I look at the beginning of 2020 and I think, what goals did I have? I've just hit every single one of them perfectly. Or maybe I was a little bit optimistic. I'm not sure about that. Well, let's start by getting out of 2020 for a second. I want to go back to July 1991. And there was this interesting moment where Bill Gates and Warren Buffett were at a dinner party and they met for the very first time. And each of them were handed a note card and they were asked to write privately, what is the one thing that you would say defines your success? One thing. That's all you got. You got one thing. And they each wrote something down. And then they flipped their cards over at the same time. And both of them put the word focus. Focus. And then Bill used all of his focus to design technology so that no one else could. And really, the truth is, I don't have to convince anybody here that focus is valuable and that we'd rather be focused rather than not focused. We want to have a focused team, not an unfocused team, a focused organization, not an unfocused organization, a focused event, right? This is what we always want. And in fact, we're inspired by people who achieve these rare feats, whether walking in for the first time and seeing the Sistine Chapel, the level of focus that was required, or hearing Amadeus Mozart, or The Last Dance, Michael Jordan. I'm not sure if you've seen it. If you haven't, I have no idea what you were doing during the quarantine. It's pretty much like what everyone had to see, right? We love it. And yet, the truth is, in the work that I do, I see over and over again that we create in an attempt to get the benefits that focus and only focus can give us: productivity, efficiency, the ability to drive forward at a more rapid pace, right? We want these things, and yet we create systems and environments and teams that actually ensure that we have virtually no chance of being able to actually focus on anything. And so what I'd like to do today is I just want to give a quick overview with some very tactical tips in terms of what is it that we actually need to be able to get focused work done, to drive focus as teams. What are the principles, really the things that really undergird why we're so challenged in these dimensions? And then how do we overcome them? What does that actually look like? A different way of thinking about it. And my fascination with focus started very young. And it all started because I was diagnosed with ADD. Yes, today you're hearing someone speak about focus that has a condition that says they can't. Next time you should have my grandmother speak on TikTok. See how that works, right? No, but I was fascinated because I couldn't actually focus. That was what I was always accused of. The childhood soundtrack of me in school was Curt, pay attention. Curt, sit still. Curt, stop talking. And then I had my sister who was unreasonable in every way. She was like top of her class at the largest high school in the nation. She has her MBA, #1 in her class in biomedical engineering, and she's the CEO of a company that is designing a space plane. I'm talking absurd. No one should ever have to endure that as an older sibling. And so I had to learn workarounds. And it wasn't until I go through undergrad and graduate studies and I'm in the corporate world and I find myself starting my own business to help others with a big platform on how do they capture attention, the other side of focus. And I find myself overwhelmed. I just find myself studying attention. How do I actually take control of this incredibly powerful resource? And every single piece of advice was wonderful for tomorrow. It was great. I was definitely going to do it next time. and it didn't work then. And so that started this 10-year journey of really asking the question, what is attention? How do I manage it? How do I direct it? What keeps me from getting to what it is that I think I need to get to? And over the last 10 years, I've seen some very clear patterns in organizations, from some of the largest in the world, to get to partner with and really study and ask the question, like, how do they better create systems for people's ability to focus? And all of it was really tough news. We were inundated, overwhelmed. And then the pandemic hit. And it was this incredible restart. Like, there were none of the obligations that kept us from focused work. And then that's not what happened at all, actually. Get this. If you're saying I struggle right now, you're not alone. We're seeing about a third of people say they're in full burnout. And it makes sense when you look at the numbers. About 68% increase in digital messaging that people are responsible for. A 55% increase in meetings, as if we didn't already have enough, right? About 2 times as many people are frequently messaging off hours during the weekends, and during especially between like 7 to 8 a.m. and 6 to 9 p.m. We're seeing this rise, and it's just constant, because if we can't see people, then they might not be working. And so let's make sure to schedule a lot of meetings so that we know they're not working. It's a good way to do it, right? And of course, it affects us here too, where, get this, like on average, people only pay attention to a webinar, to a virtual keynote for 10 minutes. Like 10 minutes. So I've got about 3 more. I think we're almost done. I don't know how this is going to go, but it makes sense. You have so much competition. Like right now, just think, more people have something that they need. Your inbox, your text messages, your next meeting to meeting, and not to mention tomorrow's Amazon Prime Day. You better get ready for that. That's in best deals of the year. I'm not really sure that's true, but I know everyone's going to be on it, because 60% of online retail purchases occur during working hours. Think about that. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about what can we do differently. What can we actually do to change the equation? And I want to go through a framework of evaluation that we use at FocusWise. And it can provide a lens and really tacticals around this. And there's lots of implications. We don't have a lot of time. So I want to go through the foundation, hit some practicals, and then open it up and be happy to answer questions and go that direction as well. So 4 foundations that when we say, are we providing the environment that is needed for focus? Number one, focus requires clarity. Focus requires clarity. Attention, the way it works, is it's the selection of what matters most at any given moment and any given time. Like, that's what it is. Attention is the selection. It's the brain's mechanism for saying, at this moment, all this stuff could matter. I have infinite options, but I only have the ability to select in and to zoom in on so many things, right? So when we don't have clarity, that means we're distracted. In fact, I want to make it clear, a lot of times when people hear that I focus and think about distraction, people assume that I'm always talking about the device, right? That's what they assume. People are on these kids these days, always on their phone, and then we're all on our phone. That's not true. Just because you're on your device doesn't mean you're distracted, right? I was walking through an airport in the good old days when that was a thing, I guess. And I was walking, and I was on my phone texting my wife on the way to the gate, and somebody walked up and they're like, "Hey, you're the distraction expert. Caught you, you're distracted." I was like, "Oh, you did, you got me. I was distracted by you. You are my distraction, not the device." Distraction at its core is confusion about what matters. It's confusion. And so if we want to get focused, we have to ask, what is it that matters most? Do you have the visibility and clarity? Have you shared with teams in a way that says they know that this matters and other things don't? And of course, the answer here is, yeah, I have. All of it matters. I don't know if you've seen, there's a lot happening and all of it matters. And it does, because we're living in a moment where there's so much change, complexity, uncertainty. And it's all screaming at us, not to mention that your attention is the most limited commodity and valuable commodity. So there's about 4,000 advertisements that you're going to have put in front of your face every day, because someone knows that if you pay attention to it, they get your pocketbook too. And they know that. And so those voices are screaming at us, and the selection occurs when the more painful and acutely painful in particular, the more likely we will be to pay attention to it. Let me put it to you this way, or slightly differently. When there's a lot of things that feel like they matter, what actually is going to hurt us the most is where we are going to go. And that's important, because if you're in the ocean like I was, and you're swimming around and all of a sudden it gets dark and you look up and there's a fish that is the size of a school bus 3 feet above you, well, first you probably take a bathroom break like I did, and then you start reviewing your options. And for me, I was like, oh shoot, I have red hair, I die first, got to change this up. And so I flipped the instructor was with me, and I flipped him between me and the fish, and he starts swimming towards it because he knew what it was. It was a whale shark. And my brain didn't need any effort to look and put all my focus on it. Here's where it gets complicated in today's world. April 2013, Boston Marathon goes off. I remember this explicitly because my wife is a marathoner. She wasn't at that one. But I'm not a marathoner because I get bored running that much and tired. That's the other thing I don't like marathons because of. I get tired. And then the 2 bombs go off, and there's an incredibly tragic event that occurs. Would you know, University of California at Irvine, Allison Holman did a massive study that showed that the experience of trauma and the stress levels of the people that were in range of the bomb was lower than people who were repeatedly exposed to the events just through media. See, technology brings everything into our space and says all of it matters all of the time. And then we ruminate around things we can't control. Clarity is not just knowing what matters most at a place and time, it's what I matter most to at a place at time. That I can, by paying attention to this, actually create change. Clarity is the first piece. Let's keep going. Number 2, we need clarity. Number 1. Number 2, we need capacity. Meaning I know what I need to do, and 2, I have the ability to get it done. I have this program called the Focus Fit Challenge that I piloted with a team at Nike, which is really fun. 4 weeks, short little micro learning that is designed to think of focus as a skill set. And I was working with a team on this, and one of the activities is called the Focus Fit Week. Like, let's actually understand our energy levels and how we can focus well versus not focus well, depending on the time of day. And someone said, but no, Curt, you don't understand that my day really just goes like this: meeting, all day long. That's what it is. In fact, I had a client broke their toe trying to get water between meetings. It's like not a great way to do it. The truth is, the human brain is incredibly complex, more complex than any supercomputer, despite what you might be hearing. But what the human brain isn't good at is taking 2 things unrelated to one another that both require language processing and to try to do them both. When we do that, we have 40% drop in efficiency. The quality of the work goes way down. Our emotional connection to the work gets just obliterated. And the more things we try to simultaneously manage, the less energy we give to any of them, the more we experience burnout, the less we're able to remember. There's all sorts of consequences. What are the limits of your capacity? Bloomin' Brands has been an incredible client, and Liz Smith, I had a chance to interview her as a part of the work. She's the now she's the executive chairman, but longtime CEO, icon in business. And she had a single mantra that she said over and over again to her executive team: fewer, bigger, better. Fewer, bigger, better. Fewer, bigger, better. Your capacity is limited. And the question is, are you throwing things away, or are you adding things? And when you work with teams, are we actually alleviating, or are we creating more stress? Like, are we throwing things across and speeding up and increasing the volume as a reward because it proves that we're loyal, right? Responsiveness means we're responsible. Responsiveness means we're there, and we end up speeding up to the point that no one's able to actually have the uninterrupted time they need to do the type of work required for us to thrive and navigate in today's age. We have to create capacity by creating space. Number 3, there's so much more I want to say there, but we'll just keep going. Number 3, curiosity. We need clarity, we need capacity, then 3, we need curiosity, meaning we actually want to do it. We're interested in it. Do you know the number one reason people leave a job is they're bored? They're bored. And it makes sense. In today's world, we have moved what is a 3-dimensional, complex need for new and interesting things person and put them behind a screen and ask why we aren't better at it. In 1509, there was a globe called the Hunt Linus Globe, and it said, hic sunt dracones on this globe, which I don't speak Latin. I do speak Pig Latin, but that's a different subject. But it says, here be dragons. That if you went too far, you would meet fire-breathing lizards that you don't want to meet. There's a documentary called Game of Thrones. You have to see it. It's definitely going to tell you don't want to meet dragons, right? The reason that they did it, though, is because we are wired to explore. We still went out. Like, this is my daughter. Right here, she's 20 months right now. She's a terrorist. She does not stop. She is constantly moving, constantly seeing new things. And that's how we're still wired. And we feel guilty that we can't get work done, but we're not wired to sit in front of a screen. So you want practical? Practical is this. How much work can we do not in front of the screen? Schedule in no device hours of work. And it's not about, I can't let people interrupt me. It's about get off the screen. This is shocking how much easy science it shows this. Like, when you're stuck, move. Like, how much can you do away from a screen in motion? We're made to be moving. And so when we move, our brain actually increases blood flow, which increases our ability to focus because the frontal cortex is the part of our brain that allows us to do it. We're not made to sit still. We're made to move and to grow and to expand. And I just have to say something else about this. Somewhere along the way, I think I've heard this over and over again from people that someone taught many of us, like, you're not made to learn. I'm not curious naturally. I just assumed it, honestly. But curiosity is the foundation of what it means to be human. And someone said, oh, you're too dumb. And then we get locked in. Here's the deal. We're living in a moment with just a level and pace of change. I don't have to explain to you. You know it. It's absurd. It's unheard of. And I hear people say things like, when the human brain is millions of years old, it's not made for this. Here's the deal. The human brain is perfectly made for this. It changes based on every input. Your brain is constantly changing. You are made to change with it. You're made to grow. And in a world where the World Economic Forum said there's a 5-year half-life for the skill set needed to perform in today's world, meaning every skill that you have, 5 years from now, it's going to have to be different. But we're made to actually change and to grow and to learn. And it's incredible. My favorite line of any book ever is a children's book that I read to my kids. There's a faith component. I need to be clear. It's not about faith. It's called When God Made You, It Doesn't Matter. This is the line, though. And I have to read it because it makes me tear up. My wife cuts onions. It's hard, but it says this. It says, so be you, fully you, a show-stopping review. Live your life in full color, every tint, every hue. Discover, explore, have faith, but love more, and learn and relearn all that God made you for, all that you were wired for. Learn and relearn. We are constantly changing. We are wired for it. This is what we need in today's world. And number four, community. Community. There's perhaps been no greater assault on any aspect of what it means to be human than the way we relate to one another over the last 9 months, right? And the fact that we can connect broadly is incredible, but it didn't start with this pandemic. It actually started over 100 years ago when, for the first time ever, human beings, that our sole advantage is the way we gather. That's all we've ever had. We're not the smartest, like, we're not the strongest, but we gather, and attention is by neuroscience, it is social, it's connected. We pay attention to what others pay attention to. We had a single community. And then a car came around and said, you can work with different people than you live with. And then this device came around, right? The iPhone and the computer, it said, you can connect with anyone, anywhere, anytime. And so what risk that occurs is we see ourselves not in the context of a cohesive community that all has a cost when we interrupt someone because they don't get their job done and I need them to do their job, to the point now where to not respond to anyone anytime is actually to say you don't matter, instead of saying you matter so much that I have to give something else my attention. And this is the pivot we have to make, because the currency of the working world is attention. I give you attention. It says you matter. It says what you're doing matters. It says that the project matters. But in fact, what it's really doing is it's spreading us out so thin because we become enemies of the very thing that we must be advocates for. And so the question is, how do you as a team say we are going to not be available to one another during these times? We're going to be fully available, open office hours during these times. And we're going to commit to preserving rather than stealing each other's attention. Because the only way to focus is by making it crystal clear that their attention is too valuable to have it spread out, and so is yours. There's so much more that I would say about it. But yeah, let's pause. Let's stop.
Can you say that line one more time? We're going to commit to preserving each other's attention versus...
rather than stealing it.
Rather than stealing.
That the evidence of us valuing each other's focus and attention is that we actually give them the ability to do it rather than demand it. Yeah.
I love that. We have a question. I don't know if you're looking at the Q&A, but Santiago says, you know, we live extremely overwhelmed lives with so much distracting input on all these different topics. Do you have some rules of thumb to fight against distractions? And then he also has a follow-up, or to help prioritize.
Yeah, great question. A few rules of thumb. Number one is we divide our time, not our attention. So how do we move from having an inbox or just an infinite abyss to actually using our calendar to define the limits and parameters of what we're going to focus on? Translation, I take that list that I got as a to-do list, I take that inbox at the beginning of the day and I look and I say, okay, this time I'm going to do this. This time I'm going to do this. I'm also going to leave a little space because I'm a human and I don't like to be thought of as a machine. Like, so in other words, every day I have 2 to 3 things. They're like, these are the things that will define whether I'm successful. I know exactly how much uninterrupted time I need. So I say, that's going to take me an hour. That's going to take me 40 minutes. And then I have them time boxed to where each category gets the amount of time, but there can be flex if I want to switch. Does that make sense? So we basically want to set our tasks to time and allow ourselves to be fully immersed in that particular thing. So that's number one. I'll do another really quick one. Number two is we want to mind the gaps between them. This might be the most important thing. I intended to do it as a tip during capacity. We're seeing that people are loving not having a commute and hating not having a commute, right? There's the thing that a commute did is it was the physical representation of a shift from one transition to another, one world to another. If we don't make rituals of not just the end of day shift, the gap, but even the in between the types of work we're doing, we end up carrying everything with us. And so all I say is like, put 5 minutes between them. Like, take a breath. Is everything I need to do accounted for here? Let's close it. Then now I'm going to jump into the next one.
I love that. I love that. Let's see. I had another question I wanted to ask you. Do you have examples of maybe something in particular that works well for teams? I mean, I love the point about committing, about, you know, preserving, but any other tips that work really well?
Yeah, I think I'll give you 2. And number one, and nobody's doing this. We're starting to see some of our clients do it because we're pushing for it. Stop with the captive meeting. So we want to provide visibility without captivity. Meaning, how do you, rather than do like, we're going to schedule a group meeting to talk about check in. Everyone's going to check in because we got to keep culture together. So we're all going to get virtual meetings where we all are annoyed that our time is being wasted. It's a great culture builder, right? No, we call it asynchronous video and audio. That asynchronous means I send it when I want to. It's why people text rather than call, because it's not captive, but we've made it where it's all captive. And so all I would say is, like, for instance, there's something called Loom videos, L-O-O-M. I'm not sponsored for them, I should be, but basically I make one click, I record a video, says this is what I need. I can even share my screen. I send it in an email, and now people can hear my voice. They can get the update. We say by the end of the day, you have to have watched each of the members' updates, but you don't have to all do it together. It also means people shorten what they say. So how do we move things from all captive calls to group being asynchronous?
Oh, that's great. Is there one thing that's like the killer when you're trying to maintain focus?
Well, yeah, interruptions. That's, I mean, I know it seems stupid, but outside interruptions. Number one indicator of how many times you're going to interrupt yourself in an hour is actually how many times someone else interrupted you the hour before. And so people are like, it's the kids, which kids are very demanding coworkers. I get it. Homeschool. This is really, no one's supposed to have to be a teacher and, learning an entirely new skill set, because your job was literally changed overnight, right? No one's supposed to do that. So all I would say is, like, how do we say, like, during these hours, there's a sign up, no one's allowed in. We have indicators of availability, and I'm not available during these times. My phone is further away. And if we allow push notifications and every other noise coming at us, what we're saying is, I'm giving up control. Let's let algorithms decide and others decide what really matters.
Great. Earlier, Curt, you mentioned this Focus Fit Challenge. Can you talk a little bit more about that? That sounds like something that might be a really engaging thing to do with teams while they're working remote.
Yeah. Honestly, it's my greatest joy right now. For 2 years, I'd wanted to produce this program, and it turns out being on the road all the time, 140 days doesn't make room for some of this. But the real heart behind it was, how do we make a program that actually can fit within people's schedules, low individual daily demands, but allow it to help with integration in an easy way. And so thankfully I had a team at Nike that said, we want to partner with you, we want to do it together. And so we built this, and it's really over each week. There's a series of challenges. They're like flashcard kind of things, like a deck of cards. Like, this is a daily challenge. And so you go through clarity during 1 week, and then you go through capacity. How do we expand our capacity 1 week? How do we reduce our demands? How do we, like, my favorite activity movie, the whole thing is called Trash Day. And this is the day everyone on the team, they pick things that they're throwing in the trash. Like, I'm not doing this. I don't need to do this. I don't have to watch The Wire. I'm tired of feeling guilty for missing anything in the world. So, like, this is those kind of fun activities that help us really get fit with our ability to pay attention to the right things.
That's amazing. Well, I am super pumped. I'm going to utilize this clarity, capacity, curiosity, and community. I love it. And I want to be mindful of people who allowed 30 minutes for this. And if you all need to go, I understand that. If you want to talk to someone at GDA about bringing Curt in to do something for your organization, we're doing a lot of stuff virtually. And actually, we did 2 events last month that were live. So you never know, it's a possibility. But give us a call and we can help you with that. Curt is going to stay on for a few minutes afterwards just to talk about what he's seeing in terms of virtual meetings. So you're welcome to stay on with us. And our next GDA Live will be November 15th with Simon Bailey. So for those of you that need to leave, thank you for joining us. And those of you who want to stay, if you have any questions about events, put them in the chat room. Curt, I just want to hear, your basic takeaway on what's working with virtual events, because I'm finding there are some upsides. So what is working for you?
Yeah. So I think there's a double-edged sword in everything, right? And I'll start by saying, I think the biggest challenge with Zoom meetings, which is you're seeing why I'm handling it the way I am, is when slides have to become the full screen. And so anything you can do to make it where people can see the person, I think is really important. And in a longer session, I actually bring people more into my space and ask people to do things in their space, because I think one of the most important things you want to do is, like, really ground people in where they are. It's one of the ways that we actually focus, right? And a couple other areas that I think are really helpful is more people go to virtual programs, but less people pay attention, right? And so how do we make sure, like, how do we actually scope it where we say, hey, we're going to do an hour or 45 minutes at most, and then we're going to take a 30-minute break. I think I've seen this start to work, and it's really working well when we shrink it down and then provide some gaps. Number 2 is, I think the interview, I love to speak, and I think it's important to let, someone who's entire world is the subject that we're speaking on to be able to lay out their ideas. But the sooner that you can bring someone in to have a dialogue, it changes things up. People really are benefited from that as well. There's 100 things I can say about this.
Are you standing or are you seated?
I'm standing, and I'm standing because I think people, when you're seated, your diaphragm is shut down, your energy level feels lower. So I stand. I have a sitting desk over here. I have a standing desk here. We intentionally darken kind of the back so there's less contrast, or there's more contrast, but we also want people to see that there's something there. Okay. So it's meant to be bright right here, further back dark here, but they can kind of see it, so it provides a subtle amount of stimulation. It's the theory.
Very, very appropriate for someone who doesn't want there to be a lot of distraction. Are there any other best practices that you can think of in terms of virtual events?
Yeah, a few things. I think number one is anytime someone is communicating virtually, unless they're in that extremely small part of the population that has really pronounced like cheeks and jaw structure, we hate you, we don't like that person, right? Unless that's the case, then we have to understand that your face gets flattened. Everything gets flattened. And so how do we make sure that you're far more emotive? This is the most important piece. Like, how am I being more expressive than I normally would be? Because otherwise people are going to get bored. And emotions are actually the brain's system for prioritizing. And so the best way to keep people's attention is to show emotion, because it tells them that whatever you're talking about, you care about. So to me, that's the most important thing to do, is like,
that is really awesome. Yeah. That's really awesome. Great.
Yeah. And double down, like, people need to be trained on this stuff. Like, it's shocking to me that even though we all know it's a new thing, that there's not a significant amount of resources that are being used to help people actually get equipped to work from home, get equipped to lead these virtual programs, get outfitted with the right equipment to do it. Like, how much money is spent on real estate, and now everyone they're all at home, and yet we're not actually spending to help people create an experience.
When was your last live event?
In person?
Oh,
well,
yeah.
It's funny you say that. I've had one. Yeah, I've had one over the summer. I did Dave Ramsey's Entree Leadership Summit, but every other one was March. Beginning of March was the last one. So, and the one in the summer was still very spread apart and largely for a live stream audience. Okay. So,
alrighty.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything that we didn't cover that you wanted to cover today, whether it's about events or your topic?
Yeah, what I'm being asked to communicate and engage people with is really, number one, how do we individually work from home? How do we create skills, like have practical skill sets there, which is a lot of what the Focus It Challenge is. And then number two is leading teams remotely. I mean, this is over and over again. And actually, I would say those are the two like what I'm hearing. And in every one of those cases, I've heard that people don't just need tactics, they need those, but they need to be encouraged. And so I think, how do we go about helping people feel like that they have less of a burden, that they're less overwhelmed, that they feel like they're encouraged and that they're in it together? And I think that's a great way that communicators from the outside can come in and provide some perspective.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I appreciated it. And just a reminder, everyone, here's what the book looks like. And let us know if you want to bring Curt in for your organization. And thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it, Curt.
Sure. Thanks for your attention.
Bye-bye.